Hi everybody, welcome to a new episode of your Friedrichcast. My name's Gary and here I am once again. Today we're going to talk about politics, but before you start running away, I'm not going to talk about partidarism, if that's even a word. I'm not sure, but I'm not going to talk about political sides or any kind of or say anything under a spectrum, anything. I'm not gonna say anything under a ideological spectrum, if you know what I mean. I'm not here to say how you should live your life, how you should vote, who you should vote for, etc., 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 which has become something really, really normal out there in the world, especially among young people. And I really believe there is a reason behind that, but I am not here to talk about that reason today. Maybe it is an interesting, or certainly it is an interesting or with big potential topic for a future episode. But today I'm here to talk about politics from a scientific point of view, I would say, basically to discuss terms, their meaning, and a few keywords and necessary vocabulary in order to talk about politics, in order to talk about the way things work out there in our society, having understood the importance of politics out there, because it's totally not only the war of ideology. It goes far beyond that. It is something that has been surrounding you ever since you were born, ever since the day you were born. Okay, whether you know it or not, whether you accept it or not, or even whether you appreciate that or you don't appreciate that. So it is so important to talk about politics. So hard these days for obvious reasons. I really believe I don't need to talk more about it, to explain more about it, but I am getting ahead of myself just as usual. In every episode I do that. So before I even start delving into this subject, how about you go and grab a cup of coffee, tea, soda, beer, whatever it takes for you to relax. I am not recording that on Friday, but a Monday. So maybe today isn't, because it's the beginning of the week, isn't the best option for you to go grab something with alcohol. But ladies and gents, cold days are finally here, as far as I can tell, as far as I feel. And well, I think the best option here would be a hot chocolate or coffee. I've had my fair share of coffee today, just as usual. Tea, anything hot really goes well with today's weather. But yeah, let's, without all these further ado points, comments, let's jump into it. Let's get it started. Well, basically I asked ChatGPT to make a list with the most useful words when the topic is politics. And as I said before, this is not about the war between groups with different points of view related to the world or society, or even party A or party B. No. We're talking about the neutral and existing state of things, okay, that we call politics. So procedures, rules, regulations, positions that one can occupy, or or work someone can exert, someone can do related to any form of public service or any kind of public service engagement. So pretty much that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I really I really need to throw up a big disclaimer toward that. I really believe that, talking about politics, as we're about to go through some of their terms, wasn't something, but it isn't in the present, but it never has been something. It has never been something common, okay, as it is discussing their ideologies, and discussing preferences, specific preferences and trends involving politics. Oh, communism, oh, capitalism, communist socialism, this, capitalism, that, socialists, this, capitalists, that. And it's a shame. It's a big shame, the fact that we're not discussing, not only today, but in the past years, in the past centuries, something that is so important, a topic that is so amazingly important and necessary, and something that really manages to affect our lives for good or for bad, okay? And we're not discussing that as society. Instead, we're attacking each other. We're calling each other names because of our political preferences or some of our personal points of view. And this is really bad, because let us stop and think together. This is still part of the disclaimer. Actually, it's more of a hard opening. Well, let's stop and think about it. Do you really believe, let's say you're on one ideological position, because there's only two. Well, I don't need any explanation right here in Brazil and the United States, other countries. So I'm gonna just keep it this way. So say you're on one side of the political spectrum. So, maybe not you. You're probably an amazing person, an open-minded person, good-hearted person, well-intended. But most people with similar opinions, similar points of view as far as politics is concerned, see the other side as pure evil, and vice versa. Okay? Well, one thing I would like to ask a person with such opinions, such convictions towards other people, is that, do you really believe that more than or almost 50% of our country is comprised of people with pure hatred, real evil, real bad people? Because if that is possible, every time the other side wins the election, we should have, or it would be more sensible if we would have a apocalypse on Earth, because the majority won. So there's five out of every 10 people you meet, you interact with, you work with, you study with, you go out with, is pure evil. So if that was true, and I truly believe it isn't true, if that was true, our world would be even 10 times, even more, I would say, but 10 times, 100 times more chaotic than it is today. Don't you agree? So I'm not saying that there aren't bad people on both sides. Of course, there are bad people everywhere. Okay, in my neighborhood, right now. Okay, and depending on the point of view, we're all bad people. But when I say bad people, I'm summoning the common sense here. Like someone who kills, someone who attacks deliberately other people without any reason, some people who deliberately wants and acts in order to bring bad things or pain or suffering upon other people. Okay, that's what I mean by bad people. There are bad people on both sides, and the more you look into something, the more it amplifies. Okay, this is a saying that is so true, because, especially today with social medias, it is really the bubbles era. Meaning, the more you're into something, to a specific political preference, the algorithm of all of the digital platforms you use, be that YouTube, be that Instagram, be that Spotify, be that anything, will bring more things to you. And I'm not saying this is bad. This is something mechanical. This is a strategy that these companies have understood and they apply in order to have more people on their platforms. It's fair, okay? It's fair enough. I'm not suggesting any changes on that. I'm suggesting changes on us. Okay, so let me just say it again. I'm not suggesting don't change the algorithm of the online platforms. Change people, right? And what about when we want people to change? What about we change first and we set the example and we show people how better it is to live a sane life, a peaceful life, which does totally not mean which doesn't totally mean that you will shut up about politics, will shut it about ideologies or the ideas you think are more productive or better for this or that related to the public good. That's totally not that. You will say out loud your opinion. There are thousands, not to say millions, of ways to express your opinion without offending people, without setting a negative influence to younger people, okay? Because never forget, especially if you're young, but never forget that the kids' role models usually are the adolescents, the teenagers, the young adults, okay, 20-year-olds. They're the role models. Just think about the time when you were in your early teens. Your heroes were all 20-year-olds, weren't they? Well, mine were. Mine totally were. In their 20 or late 20s or early 20s. So yeah, this is a good disclaimer, or as I said before, a heart opening. So I really appreciate you having listened to that. So let's take a look at the lists of words, of keywords and important words when we're talking about politics. And again, not the ideologies, but the science politics, the serious conversation. Let's do it. So let us take a look at the list ChatGPT has brought us about politics. So starting off with general terms. First, government. Well, some of the words I will translate, some of them I won't because it's needless, okay? Like this first example, government, okay? But I'm going to read a short description that is associated to that. Government is a system or group of people governing an organized community or country. Democracy, a political system where citizens have the power to elect their leaders and influence decisions. Republic, a state in which supreme power rests with the people and their elected representatives. State, an organized political community under one government. And here a very important disassociation to make, because we tend to associate state and government. So they're separate things, okay? Totally separate things. Things that go towards a similar direction, but they're different things. Government is, we're talking about the representatives, the elected representatives, say president, say the Congress people, say the senators, governors, etc., etc. And the state is the machine, okay, the whole system, right? For example, democracy is part of our state. The separation of the three powers, executive, legislative, and judicial powers this is also a part of our state, okay? So the state is the system, and the government are the governors, okay? The elected representatives. So let's take a look more. Nation, a large group of people united by common descent, history, culture, or language, living in a particular area. Constitution, a set of fundamental principles or established precedents by which a state is governed. Law, A system of rules recognized by a country or community as regulating the actions of its members. Policy, a course of action adopted or proposed by a government or party. Yeah, policy is something we may translate as política in Portuguese, but not as the president, governor, etc. But policy like rules, okay? So this company has these policies, for example, okay? Essa empresa tem essas políticas, so pretty much that. But of course, in the politics area, we can use that as the way it's been just described. Power, the ability to influence or control the behavior of people or the course of events. That's a good description. Authority, the legal or rightful power to give orders and make decisions. Now let's take a look at some political systems and ideologies, the most common political systems and ideologies. Capitalism, an economic and political system where trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit. Socialism, a political and economic system in which the means of production are owned or regulated by the community or state. Communism, a political theory advocating classless society and communal ownership or property. Conservatism, a political philosophy promoting traditional values and institutions and resistance to change. Liberalism, a political ideology centered on individual liberties, equality, and democracy. Anarchism, the belief of the abolition of all government and the organization of society on a voluntary basis. Fascism, a far-right authoritarian political system emphasizing nationalism and dictatorial power. Monarchy, a system of government with a king or queen at the head. Theocracy, a system of government in which priests or religious leaders rule in the name of a deity. That is a god, right? Oligarchy, a form of government where a small group of people have the control. Now let's take a look at political roles and institutions. President, the elected head of a republican state. Prime Minister, the head of a government in parliamentary systems. Senator, a member of Senate, often a part of a legislative body in a republic. Parliament, the legislative body of government, especially in systems like the UK or Canada. Congress, the legislative branch of the US federal government, consisting of the House and the Senate. Cabinet, a group of top officials who advise the head of state and help implement government policy. Well, this is basically what we call in Portuguese gabinete. The gabinete do presidente, the president's cabinet. Pretty much a literal translation, okay? Politician, the adjective, a person actively involved in politics, especially as an elected official. Mayor, the elected head of a city, town, or a municipality. That is prefeito, okay? Mayor. Chancellor, a senior official in some countries, such as the head of a German government. In Brazil, this is basically chanceler in Portuguese. We traditionally call the head of the foreign politics, the head of the foreign politics, the minister of foreign politics. Governor, an elected official who governs a state or province. Elections and voting. Ballot, actually the pronunciation. A method of voting, often a paper or electronic form used in elections. So some of the elections are use paper ballots. Some of the elections, like here in Brazil, use a electronic ballot, okay? Campaign, an organized effort to influence decision-making within a specific group. Vote, a formal expression or opinion or choice in an election. Electorate, all the people in a country or area who are entitled to vote. Candidate, a person who is nominated or applies for a position, especially in an election. Debate, a structured discussion between candidates or parties presenting their views and ideas. One selected. Poll, a survey to gauge public opinion or to place where voting takes place. So this is the same word as what we call urna, okay? A poll is the urna, but also the voting intention, as we say in Portuguese, okay? You say the poll or the polls. Every time you see the news talking about the polls, this is what they're talking about. Referendum, a direct vote in which the public decides on a particular proposal or issue. We had that in Brazil a few decades ago. Majority, more than half of the votes or support in a decision-making process. Turnout, the percentage of eligible voters who actually cast a ballot in an election, so who actually vote in the election. Turnout. I don't think we have a word to translate it, but we could say in Portuguese, votos válidos, right? Political actions and terms. Legislation, laws that are legislation means laws that are enacted or being considered by a legislature. Veto, you write veto, but you pronounce veto. The power to reject a decision or proposal made by a lawmaking body. Usually we see that coming around more from presidents, from the executive power. Impeachment, the process of charging a public official with misconduct. Lobbying, the act of attempting to influence decisions made by officials, often by interest groups. Well, this is legalized in some countries. It is not in Brazil, but in some countries like the United States, for example, it is totally legalized. Of course, there are specific rules to it. It is quite well controlled, but it is still legal at the end of the day. Protest, a public demonstration expressing strong objection to a policy or event or decision or something that the president especially does or says. Revolution, a significant change in political power, often through force and aggression or mass movement. Coup, this is a French word, that's why pronunciation doesn't match with the written word, okay? Let me spell it. C-O-U-P, okay? Coup. It means strike. So we say coup d'état, strike of state, okay? A sudden, often violent takeover of government by a small group. Diplomacy, managing international relations through negotiation and dialogue. Sanctions, penalties imposed on countries to influence behavior or policies. Treaty, a formal agreement between countries, often about peace, trade, and or cooperation. So treaty is what we call in Portuguese tratado. So let's just last but not least take a look at the acronyms. Most common acronyms when we're talking about politics, especially about international politics. So starting off with the UN, the United Nations, an international organization formed to promote peace, security, and cooperation between the countries of the world. NATO, a military alliance of North American and European countries. In Brazil, we call it OTAN. Foreign policy, a government's strategy in dealing with other nations. Embassy, the official residence or office of a country's ambassador in a foreign country. So an ambassador, an official representative of a country sent to another nation. War, a state of armed conflict between different countries or group. And peace, a state in which there is no war or conflict. Alliance, a union formed for mutual benefit, especially between countries or organizations. Summit, reunião de cúpula em português, a high-level meeting between leaders of different countries. A summit can happen in politics or in private initiatives, okay? Trade agreement, a treaty between two or more countries to facilitate commerce. Okay, so, well, I really hope I have helped you achieving or increasing or achieving new words, learning new words related to politics, and of course, to make your vocabulary in general more more amplified, so to say. And I hope the message has hit your heart and let us all together make a better world, despite of any political convictions and ideologies that we might have, and we all do have. We're humans at the end of the day. We're not robots. So let us keep our heart in the right place and our brain in an even more right place. Okay. All right. This is all for today. Thanks again for your lovely company. This is all for this episode. I see you in the next one. Bye bye.